I hear that you are going to summer camp.
I'm being sent to summer camp.
Sweetie, tell your counselors if you have any trouble sleeping, they can get in touch with us.
Hey, welcome back, guys. Hey, how are y'all? Welcome.
I know you don't understand this, but you need this. And I swear it's gonna be the best summer ever.
First year here? Yeah, I can tell.
Your file mentioned that you have nightmares sometimes. There used to be cabins all throughout these woods. One of those cabins belonged to a doctor. He had this huge cellar in the basement. If you stay up too late, or if you leave your cabin past curfew, you just might see the doctor.
I saw him.
He's not real, Morgan. It's just a dumb story.
It's the doctor! He's real!
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the latest episode of Fresh Cuts. This is Mike, and joining me, as always, it's Mr. Venom. What's up, Venom?
Greetings and salutations, strange children. I actually wanted to use a different greeting, but it might be a little bit of a spoiler for this week's movie. So let's just go with strange children. I think we've all been strange children at some point, so it works.
Yep, that's true. Speaking of strange, also, it's Don and Nelly. What's up, Don?
Hey, what's going on? Always happy to be here. And fuck you, Mike.
That was not strange of Don to say that. All right. Well, coming off, at least a few hours of the main show recording last night. We finally got that in the can, so we'll talk more about that later. But I think this is the first time I've recorded 2 days in a row in a while. But we were not at the theater this week. We didn't skip out on anything. There just wasn't a release to go to, at least not wide enough that all of us would have seen anything. So we actually grabbed a movie off VOD that's been around for a few weeks. I actually watched this for the first time, I think when it first hit VOD, and we might have been looking at the time, and we just went with something else that was probably a bigger known release. And I am kind of interested what everyone has to say about it, because I haven't heard a lot about this, just because it seems like a lot of people haven't seen it yet, but it kind of is trending in one direction for what I have heard, but I don't even want to say any more than that. So we're just going to get into it. The movie is Marshmallow. Yes, that is the title of the movie, Marshmallow. Marshmallow. It is deemed as a horror sci-fi movie, which I think is pretty accurate. I might even reverse, though. Like, I don't know if IMDb lists in an order for like how the movie's viewed, but I would actually maybe say
I've seen stuff where it's listed as horror drama, and I've seen stuff listed as drama horror. So I don't think it's one of those cases where it's,
there's no emphasis either way. Okay.
Yeah, it's just one of. I think it's
probably
just they
just
upload
alphabetical.
everything. That's what I was trying to get at. Was that I don't think it is alphabetical, because I've seen horror drama and I've seen drama horror.
Everything,
Okay.
the couple of movies I've looked at right now on IMDb, they are alphabetical, like horror, sci-fi, horror, whatever. But you're probably right. You've probably seen more listings on IMDb than I have.
Yeah, it could be inconsequential, just up to the whoever's works for
Mhm.
IMDb that's making the individual entries, however they do it, I guess. But anyways, I will grab the synopsis off IMDb, which is: when a once fabled campfire tale becomes real, a group of campers uncover a profound secret that questions their very existence. Well, that sounds dramatic. But what about the movie? Venom, we'll start with you. What did you think of Marshmallow?
This was an odd watch for me. I have this thing where first time watches are very important to me, and the experience that I have while watching a movie for the first time matters. This is a movie where I was thoroughly frustrated for probably the first hour to hour and 10-15 minutes or so. Once we get the reveal of what's actually happening here, it answers a lot of questions as far as events that occurred in the first like hour 10 minutes of the movie. But it doesn't change the fact that I was frustrated throughout my first watch of this movie. So even though I did kind of like the ending and it did kind of answer pretty much all of the questions that I had about weird situations that occurred throughout the movie, the fact of the matter is my one watch of this movie was very frustrating. I was yelling at the screen. So let's just get into it. I mean, it starts out as your basic summer camp slasher, which is what I thought I was on board for, but by the third act, it turns into something completely different. That's when it really earns its sci-fi moniker, is during the last act of the film. And I'm still, I don't know. I mean, it's been about an hour and a half since I finished watching the movie, and I'm still kind of on the fence on whether I quote unquote enjoyed the movie. Like I said, I was frustrated because there's bullying throughout. A summer camp slasher that's got bullying in it. Oh my God, how fucking original. But yeah, it's a trope that I'm kind of sick of watching. I'm sick of douchey, shitty characters that are there just to be antagonistic or to be guilty pleasure kills, which is what I thought we were in store for. Obviously, once we get the reveal, it kind of changes that whole dynamic, but I don't know, man. I'm still kind of on the fence on this one because my first time watch was so frustrating. I was yelling at the TV screen. I hate most of the characters in this movie. And then even the ones that seem like they're somewhat redeemable, still by the end of the movie end up just being, I don't know, shitty. I'm trying to be as ambiguous as possible. But yeah, I don't know. There were a couple of decent performances, specifically from the kids in the movie. None of the performances of any of the adults were all that impressive. The one thing I will give this movie is that it's got beautiful cinematography. Obviously, the whole movie is for the most part shot in the woods, so it's not hard to get nice shots when you've got a nice scenic location. But I mean, some of the shots were really nice the way that they were framed, with like the actors on like one side of the screen and then like a boat or something inanimate on the left side of the screen or something. I like the way that a lot of the shots in this movie were framed. So kudos to the cinematographer, but that's about the only person I can really give many kudos to. And watching the end credits, I can't believe Robert Kurtzman did the effects for this movie. And my first question was, what effects? There's not really a whole lot going on here. Tiny little bit of gore at the end of the film, but yeah, I don't know. It seems like Robert Kurtzman's talents were wasted on this one, but again, whatever. And then the goddamn name of the director. Somebody please tell me that this is this guy's real name, because if this is a stage name, I hate you. The director's name is Daniel Del Purgatorio. Now, it could be a legitimate, real Italian name, and I hope it is. I legitimately hope it is, because if this is like a stage name, I fucking hate this guy. I already hate him. I didn't like your movie, and you take a moniker like Del Purgatorio. I don't know, whatever. But like I said, hopefully it's a real name, and I won't have as much disdain for this director. But ultimately, it's still, cliche summer camp slasher for the first probably act of the film. And then the second act of the film, it seems like it's turning into more of a conspiracy thing happening where there's more players involved than just the doctor, if you will, the quote unquote doctor who is our antagonist, I guess. If you watch the trailer, you know what I'm talking about. And then the third act, again, like I said, it just goes solid sci-fi, and that's where it loses me, especially 2 weeks after watching Megan 2.0 and being thoroughly disappointed with that film. This one taking a slight, and it's not an overt sci-fi turn at the end. It's more of a slight one. Let's say scientific more than sci-fi necessarily. And obviously science is the first part of sci-fi, science fiction, obviously. So the science is there and the fiction is there. So I guess I can't argue with it being sci-fi. But obviously, when we think of sci-fi, we think of outer space, aliens, creatures, spacemen, blah blah blah, ships, everything else. It's not usually just like a scientific explanation, but in this one, I'll go ahead and accept that yes, the third act does kind of turn to sci-fi. Like I said, I'm rambling here because I'm just not sure what to think of this movie. Like I said, my first watch was thoroughly frustrating. I did like where the third act went, and I even like the ending of the movie, the actual final scene of the movie. I actually loved. It's my favorite scene in the whole damn movie. But overall, like I said, frustrating watch. Maybe on a second watch, and I don't know that I would ever watch this a second time, but maybe on a second watch, it might be a little bit more entertaining because I already know what's happening. But like I said, the summer camp cliche of kids bullying other kids, adults bullying other adults, it's a trope that I am thoroughly, thoroughly sick of. And, if I never see it again, it would be a beautiful, life. Because I don't know why directors feel the need to put dipshits and shitty characters in their movie just to be like guilty pleasure kills later in the film, which is not what happens here. But that's what I thought was happening as I'm watching the movies. This is why I'm trying to explain all this, that my one watch of this movie was too frustrating for me to give this a good rating, to say that it's a quote unquote good movie. I will say the story is very original, and I will say that the ending caught me off guard. I did not expect the reveal to be what it was, so I will give the movie credit for that. I'll give the writer and director credit for surprising me, because obviously I've been watching horror movies for over 45 years now, and it's very hard to surprise me. So I will give them credit there. But ultimately, it's an okay movie, middle of the road. It's a not very satisfactory summer camp slasher, and then it turns into a not very satisfactory sci-fi movie. So I'm just going to say I am not the target market for this movie. I was definitely hoping that it would go in a different direction than it did. But I also recognize that it's not necessarily a quote unquote bad movie. Like I said, it's well made. It looks nice. There's some decent performances from the child actors. The editing is fine. Direction is fine. It's just the writing that I have a major issue with. And like I said, the journey leading up to that great reveal in the third act. So I'll just leave it at that and just say it didn't really hit a lot of check boxes for me when I look for these types of movies. So it left me a little disappointed. Let's just leave it at that for general thoughts. Michael?
Okay, my Zoom window didn't want to appear. So over to you, Don. What did you think of the movie?
I'm kind of close to where Venom is on this. I did enjoy it. I did like the setup. I think there's a lot going on there that kind of gives us a strong starting point. The 80s summer camp slasher vibe feels kind of fun. You've got a decent mystery with where everything's going. You've got a solid starting point. Um, I didn't mind the characters. I kind of expected it to be like that just based on where the story's going to go. Or you expect it to be a summer camp slasher before it starts going off in its own direction. A lot of that's slow going, but it's fun enough to keep you invested as in it as it goes along. Um, yeah, my main issue is it kind of starts turning up in the second act where not a lot of it really comes together all that well. I don't like the direction it takes. Um, the way that we get there is fun. I like the individual set pieces that come about, but yeah, it's the way that it comes together, which is the don't want to give too much away. Story comes together, which kind of sets me off. I don't know if this is the kind of film that really needed this kind of setup, and it kind of just goes off in a different direction. I think it takes a little too long to get there, and that factor against it where you spend far too much time. It's a lot of the setup out. There's no real room to breathe with it. It falls apart for me as it was going to be the summer camp slasher at first, but and that's kind of what it's one that I think it needs to, go into spoilers a little. Yeah, decent enough for what it is. I enjoyed aspects of it, but yeah, overall, it kind of fell a little flat and doesn't really hit the mark. I'll leave it at that, and I guess.
All right. So I kind of agree. It's a little middle of the road for me. I think I what I appreciate about the movie is more maybe what it was trying to do than it actually succeeded in doing. Um, I feel like it was a long, slow, kind of tedious road to get to like the reveal, and then once the reveal happened, it was like late enough in the movie where they just tried to like cram a bunch of stuff in. And I actually think, I mean, the thing that frustrated me the most was the last like what 2 minutes of the movie, like literal 2 minutes, set up a movie I probably would have wanted to see more than like what we saw from the previous 90 minutes or however long the movie was. Like,
Thank you.
yeah, if if we would have got like the reveal maybe 35 minutes in and then got to what they did at the end, like maybe an hour in, and then the last half hour was that scenario playing out. Because today was my second time watching it, but like my first time watching it, I probably wasn't paying attention to like the runtime or where we were at in the movie because I was like, oh, okay, here we go. Like we built to this and now it's gonna culminate. And then that was actually like the end of the movie, and I was like, oh, what? Like, so I was like, are they trying to like tease like that this could go? I mean, I don't see this as being like at the start of a franchise, but it just kind of disappointed me because I'm like, man, that's actually the movie I wish we would have got, or at least more of it, not just kind of like a suggestion of, well, this is what happens, and you just have to like imagine kind of the rest and it playing out now. Um, but like, yeah, like I said, conceptually, it's like I do find what the story was. I find it all interesting. I just think this is the case where it's a good idea that was only turned into like a so-so movie, unfortunately. If if they had like a better script or they were more concise with getting us to the destination and giving us more of like the horror stuff that we got at the very very end, I think it would have been a much better movie. It's the kind of movie where it's like, okay, let's see what they do with a better script. I'm actually, let me look. Is the director was not the writer, so I
No.
would like to see like what this director would do with like a better script, maybe, if they stay in the genre. But it's an okay movie. I would say it's worth a watch. It's sitting at 6.0 on IMDb, but I do think it's like slowly dropping because I think when I had first seen it, it was a little bit higher. So it's probably starting to like level out with the more people that see it and leave reviews. You know, I would say it's middle of the road, but if you're if you have nothing to watch and you're interested in seeing something that conceptually has some decent ideas and concepts going for it, at least, to like break itself away from just your typical like summer camp slasher, because that's definitely what the movie suggests it's setting up at the beginning. Like it's almost like all the tropes and normal setups of like, oh hey, everyone ends up at the summer camp isolated and someone's gonna be killing people. That's kind of like what you think you're in for. And then they drop like a twist or a reveal that turns everything sideways, which is fine, but then from there to like the very like last scene, it's kind of like, I would say it's a little disappointing. And then the end scene like previews a movie that we just didn't see. So yeah, I'll leave my general thoughts at that as I go on mute to cough.
This movie is sitting at 91% on Rotten Tomatoes right now. Are you fucking kidding me? What movie did they watch? I'm very confused how this got 91% positive reviews. I mean, I get, like I said, I earlier I said the movie's not objectively bad. It's not. It's just a little dull. There's some odd tonal changes that maybe might take some people out of the movie. I actually like the tonal change myself because I was getting frustrated with what was happening for the first half of the movie. So once we actually get that tonal change to a little bit of sci-fi, I was actually on board for it. Because like I said, the movie was just, I mean, I was ready to give this movie like a 3 out of 10 after about an hour of watching it. I was just so frustrated with the story, the characters, the main camp, the guy that was running the camp, like all of his actions made zero sense throughout the film. But then once we get to the end, like I said, once we get our reveal, all is explained. But that doesn't always necessarily mean that the movie suddenly is good or that I suddenly enjoyed my experience with it. No, I did not. I flat out did not. As much as I actually did enjoy the third act of this one, it definitely was a slag getting there. And it just, yeah, left me very, very disappointed. So I guess let's just go ahead and get into our walkthrough. There's not really too much more to talk about that's spoiler free. So let's go ahead and get into it. Our movie opens up with a dream. Our main character, whose name is Morgan, a little boy living with his parents, seems like he's an only child. Basically, he has a dream where, and it's kind of a interesting dream. Basically, he's laying in bed, and then suddenly the room starts to flood. The bedroom literally just starts to fill with water. Then he moves his blanket and exposes what looks like an axe wound on his belly, like a big gaping wound, but instead of blood gushing out, it's water. So his room is literally flooding with the water coming out of his large wound on his stomach. What does that mean? Not sure. We'll have to see where the movie goes from here. So he wakes up, and this is when we find out that he lives with his parents and his grandfather, played by Corbin Burnson. Corbin Burnson, who actually gets top billing in this movie, even though he's in this movie less than anyone else in here, other than maybe the parents. Maybe Morgan's parents are in it a little bit less than Grandpa, but man, to get top billing and be in the movie for all of 4 minutes seems a little excessive, but he is the biggest name in the movie, so it makes sense. So anyway, there are Morgan, his grandfather, and his parents are both there. They're all there. Excuse me. They're having dinner, and Morgan is upset because his parents are forcing him to go to summer camp. Something that I think a lot of us have experienced because I don't know. Parents sometimes have this idea that kids are supposed to go to summer camp for some reason, whether they want to or not, and that mentality was already bothering me. Like I already was pissed off at his parents for forcing him to go to this camp when he very obviously did not want to. But again, all will be explained. So unfortunately, that evening, Grandpa has a heart attack and passes away. And that's it. That's it for Corbin Burnson. We will see him a little bit more in the movie during some hallucination scenes and flashbacks, but just very quick shots, no dialogue, or at least not much dialogue anyway. So after the funeral, Morgan's parents go ahead and take him to his summer camp where obviously, Morgan is a very shy, standoffish kid, he's not very social. He's bullied by the older kids in his neighborhood. And as it turns out, his main bully is actually here at the camp as well. And not only that, they make him his damn roommate. Like they put him in the same cabin together, which obviously they probably figured, well, they live on the same street, so they probably know each other. But little do they know that they are basically at odds, bully and the person being bullied. So eventually, strange things start happening. And on the first night there, they're told a campfire story, a scary campfire story. Very simple, something that anyone who's gone to summer camp has probably, sat around the fire and listened to a scary story. So the story that they tell is called, or it's about the doctor. And basically, he is someone who used to live in the woods, used to live in this area. He lived in I think they said he actually lived in one of the cabins on the campsite. And that he basically would disappear into his basement for days at a time, much to the chagrin of his wife. Well, one day his wife decides to pretend that she's asleep in bed, but she actually gets up and follows him into the basement to see what's happening. And that's when, she gets the reveal that her husband, the doctor, has been experimenting on people. She walks into, and we don't see any of this. Like I said, it's a campfire story. So it's just being, told to us by one of the counselors. Basically, the wife sees that there's body parts everywhere. There's dead bodies, people that look like they've been Frankensteined, where they'll have their body parts removed and then replaced with body parts from other bodies. So it seems like they're setting up somewhat of a Frankenstein type story, a modern day Prometheus, if you will. And then, the campfire story ends. Everybody goes to bed. Now, unfortunately, Morgan has, obviously the movie started with Morgan having a nightmare, and that's kind of prevalent throughout the film. Morgan obviously is a very messed up kid. He's got some, mental health issues. And, he has these nightmares that constantly wake him up. He ends up getting bullied by CJ, his bully from his neighborhood, who is now with him at summer camp as well. We're introduced to all the camp counselors, the main, the guy who's actually running the camp, and then all the camp counselors. They come off as just very, traditional. One or two of them come off as very nice. One of them is a stoner. One of them is, just very sexual. I don't like to use the word slut, but, just a very sexual girl. And then, like I said, the guy that's running the camp. So, and the stoner, I forgot about the stoner Mexican. I think he's Mexican. He's Latino of some kind. So like I said, we meet everybody at the camp. And then that night, after they hear the story of the doctor, of course, Morgan has a nightmare where he thinks he sees the doctor in his cabin. As it turns out, he doesn't, or at least we think he doesn't at the time. Again, more bullying, CJ continuing to bully him. At one point, CJ actually tries to get Morgan's attention, to pull him aside to have like a sidebar, and basically, apologizes, said, "I'm sorry for everything that I've done. Maybe we should just reset and start over." And Morgan, agrees and says, "Yeah, we should start over. Where should we start?" And then, of course, the CJ says, "Let's start with your first swim lesson." And he literally pushes him into the lake. Now, my friends, he pushed a kid into a lake and who he knows cannot swim. Last I checked, that's fucking attempted murder. What happens after this? One of Morgan's friends witnesses CJ pushing him into the lake. His name is Raj, an Indian kid. Raj tries to defend Morgan, and then CJ unmercifully beats the shit out of him. I don't know how the hell Raj survived. Well, actually, when you get the reveal at the end, I do know how he survived. But the point is, this kid, CJ, the bully, is unmercifully unloading like ground and pound. He's in full mount, and he's just beating the shit out of Raj to the point where the counselors have to pull him off of Raj. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, this kid, CJ, just attempted murder twice. He literally threw a kid who can't swim into a lake, and then he attacked a kid and continuously punched him in the face until he was pulled off of him by a counselor. That's attempted murder, last I checked. And then the next morning, what happens? Nothing, fucking nothing. No cops are called, no parents are called, and I'm sitting there just screaming at the fucking screen. Like, what the fuck kind of camp is this? This doesn't make sense. This kid just attempted double murder and no cop has been called. His parents haven't been called. Like, what is going on? So that's, I'm already frustrated with character decisions and some personalities at this point. But then now actual plot points are pissing me off. Like, what is going on here?
Yeah, and the issue, because like I kind of had the same frustration like after that scene, because I was like, it's one thing if they actually give us a scene where like the counselors are discussing it, but discussing it like inadequately, and we're like, okay, they suck, but like it's almost like they don't even address it either way. Like it's just kind of ignored that what just happened, because it's like it's not like he just like pushed him in the pool and punched a kid. Like he nearly beat a kid to death, not to mention pushed the kid into the pool that could have killed him.
Lake.
And then, or lake, excuse the pool, lake. And then like it's just like it didn't happen, which I understand. I assume what they're saying is like, well, we're trying to establish things here are weird, but it's like it's so egregious that like you you can't just have them like not even acknowledge what just happened, because normal fights are due to happen when you have like large groups of people, especially like at that age. Like if it was merely like a kid got punched and they had to like separate them and like dole out like a minor punishment, I get it, but like that was so over the top that I'm like, well, are we supposed to go right to the next scene like nothing happened, and they're not even talking about it amongst each other as the authority figures? Like that's ridiculous.
Yeah, I think they kind of just went too far. Like one or two punches, and then they interrupt. Okay, fine, like you can deal with that. But then, like Venom saying, the full mountain pound. Like 4 or 5 like legitimate times you see him throw back the fist and like launch downwards. Like that's too much. And then you see like all of the the bloody nose and like all that stuff. Like there's no way something like that goes on. It's like too big of a scene for what they're attempting to pull off.
Exactly. Yeah, it was just a little bit too much for us first time watchers. So yeah, just one of the gripes, one of the many gripes I have with this movie. So anyway, the next morning, or that evening, I should say, not even the next morning, that evening after CJ's double attack, Morgan is excused from any more camp activities for the day. He's not sent home. He's not sent to a hospital because Morgan actually, he needed CPR. He needed to be resuscitated. So he was out. He had water in his lungs. If he was down there for too much longer, he was dead. And here's Morgan still at camp. No doctor has looked at him. They haven't taken him to a hospital. This is what I mean about the first time watch. You're just like, what the fuck is going on? This doesn't make any sense. So anyway, that night, and then something else odd that's happening that instantly was a red flag to me, and no one in the camp actually said anything. At night, the campers were all forced to drink hot chocolate. Let me repeat that. At night, before everyone went to bed, the campers were forced to drink a cup of hot chocolate. What does that say to you, my friends? You savvy horror fans out there. There's obviously something nefarious going on there, but what is it? Are they drugging these kids so they sleep through the night? What is happening? So obviously that night, the night that after CJ's double attack and Morgan being excused from camp activities, he does not drink the hot chocolate that night. And he basically ends up having what we think is a hallucination. Because like I said, Morgan has very vivid dreams and very vivid hallucinations about something that happened to him in the past. There's a scene where he talks about he doesn't swim. He doesn't like the water. And there are flashbacks. And obviously, I already talked about the dream sequence at the beginning where his room was flooding with water. So obviously, this kid has a fear of water. We just don't know why quite yet. So like I said, that evening, He does not drink his hot chocolate, but he still ends up having what we think at the time is a hallucination. Because the night before, remember, he had what we thought was a hallucination where he saw the doctor in his cabin. Well, here it is the next day. And once again, the doctor, or actually this time, the doctor wasn't in his cabin. He somehow woke up in the doctor's like basement. I don't know how the fuck this happened. Like I said, I thought it was a dream. But then as the scene continues, you realize it's not a fucking dream. It's actually real life. Somehow Morgan woke up in the doctor's cabin. No explanation why, just, take it. So there it is. Obviously, he has a interaction with the doctor. The doctor tries to tase him with a cattle prod. Unsuccessfully, Morgan is able to stab the doctor in the foot with a Swiss Army knife that his grandfather gave him earlier in the movie. And he's able to escape. He goes to his friends, the couple of friends that he's actually made, Dirk, the chubby kid, Raj, who I already mentioned earlier, and then one other kid whose name I already forgot. He goes to run to his friends to tell them the doctor, just attacked me. He's real. Now, this is exactly what he did the night before, and nobody believed him. So now his friends are actually starting to get frustrated with them. Just like, they're literally telling him, shut the fuck up. We're sick of your crazy shit. And then lo and behold, the doctor shows up standing right behind Raj. And suddenly that's when I realized, oh shit, this ain't a dream sequence. This actually happened. So basically the doctor with his cattle prod tases Raj, knocking him out. Morgan, Dirk, and the third kid just run out. At first, they are going to run to the counselors, to the camp counselors, because they figure that, it's safe with the counselors. But Morgan has developed a little bit of a little fledgling romance with one of the girls at the camp. And he decides he wants to go and help her before helping himself, to getting himself to safety. So they end up going to the girl's cabin. Of course, they tell her, and now all three of them, not just Morgan, but Morgan, Dirk, and the third kid are now telling, Morgan's little pseudo girlfriend, the doctor's real. He attacked us. Now, obviously, the girl and the girl's roommate or cabin mate don't believe him. They think, oh, you guys are idiots. But then suddenly they turn around and they see the doctor walking in the distance right towards them. They freak out and they all run, not all in separate ways, but like the girl's roommate ends up running by herself in a different direction. And then Morgan, Dirk, his little girl, and the third kid end up going to like the boathouse to hide. Now, while they're hiding in the boathouse, what we see is the doctor going on a fucking rampage outside, where he's literally walking into cabins filled with kids and just knocking them all out with the cattle prod, just tasing every single one of them and knocking them out cold. Another thing that left me scratching my head is why all these kids stayed down after getting tased. I don't know how many people listening to my voice have ever been hit with a cattle prod. Yes, it sucks, it hurts, and you do get knocked out, but you're only out for a couple of minutes. Whereas these kids have been out for hours now. So obviously, again, something kind of weird is happening. So we see the doctor basically going around just cattle prodding all the kids, knocking them all out. And then finally, he runs into a counselor, the black guy. I forgot his name. Franklin. So that he runs into Franklin, and Franklin basically looks at him like he knows who he is, like he's acquainted with the doctor, and says, hey, what are you doing? We can't do that right now. The doctor, or the person in the costume, basically pushes Franklin out of the way. He falls down and passes out. The director didn't take the diligence to actually show Franklin hit his head on anything. So the scene looks ridiculous. It literally looks like the doctor just pushes Franklin over and Franklin just falls over and passes out, like for no reason. But then later on, we find out that, yeah, he did hit his head on something when he got pushed over. At this point, more of our kids are still hiding out, like I said, at the boathouse. And then that's when the douchebag shows up, the douchebag counselor, which I haven't really spoken about much because I fucking hate him. But, you know, he's, you know, horror trope number 347, just, you know, the douchebag, you know, buff, good looking guy that, you know, just bullies everybody around him, blah, blah, blah. Suddenly he shows up, and this is where we get the reveal that, yes, the counselors are actually in on this. And that includes the one good, the nice girl counselor that I thought was going to be our final girl, but actually she goes from nice girl to evil bitch on a dime. So I'll give that actress credit, because, you know, she's like an absolute sweetheart for the first half of the movie, but then once we get the reveal that the counselors are all in on this, you know, she does the evil bitch turn really, really well. So still don't know what's going on. All we know is that the doctor is going around knocking all these kids out with the cattle prod, and the counselors are somehow in on it. They're like allowing the doctor to do what they need to do. Eventually, the roommate of Morgan's little girlfriend, she ends up running off on her own. She ends up falling over a hill, getting her leg gets impaled on like a twig like goes through her shin area, like the meat on the back of the shin. So she's obviously injured. Eventually she gets up to the road, and luck would have it, a police officer just happens to be driving down the road. So she's able to get the police officer's attention. It's a female police officer who's by herself, no partner. And she basically starts to tell her, we need to get out of here. We need to get out of here. You know, the doctor's here, and he's killing everybody, blah, blah, blah. Obviously, no one's actually died at this point, but the kids, you know, they see kids lying motionless on the floor. They think that they're dead. So, and the cop at first seems like she's helpful. She's like, all right, get in the car. Let me get you out of here. But of course, the cop is in on it as well. She ends up taking the girl back to the camp, where the girl ends up getting, you know, tased with a cattle prod by the good girl counselor, the one that we thought was the good girl counselor. And now, like I said, we realize that all the counselors are in on this. Now, at this point in the movie, I'm just like, what the fuck is going on? Like, is this a sex slave trade operation? Is this an organ harvesting operation? Like, what is going on? Like, it didn't make sense to me that these counselors thought that they could make 50 kids, at least 50 kids, disappear and nobody would question it. You know, I'm just sitting there like, what is the end game here? Well, my friends, eventually we do get the end game. When Morgan and his little friend are hiding, they end up finding medical records for all the campers. And Morgan instantly is like, wait a minute, why do they have medical records for us? It's just a summer camp. That doesn't make sense. He ends up finding CJ's file, his bully, you know, the CJ, the kid who attempted double murder. And he sees that CJ has a date of birth of 2018, a date of death of 2018. CJ died like 5 years ago. They don't give us the actual year in this movie, but it's definitely modern day. There's cell phones in the movie. And like I said, CJ on his certificate says his date of death was 2018. Then Morgan finds his own file, and he looks at it, and we see the look of shock on his face, but he doesn't say specifically what he sees in the file. He just, him and his little girlfriend drop the files like in shock, like they're both in shock, and they go to try to find the rest of the counselors. At this point, the only kids that haven't been knocked out are Morgan, his little girlfriend, Dirk, the chubby kid, and like maybe one other kid. And Dirk, I'm going to give Dirk credit because he ends up slamming the douchebag in the face with a baseball bat, definitely breaking his nose. I mean, his face was all tore up when it was all over. So, you know, kudos to Dirk for that one, you know. Getting to see a little fat kid, you know, get the better of a big buff douchebag always makes me happy. So awesome work there. But unfortunately, after Dirk hits the douchebag with the baseball bat, the doctor is literally right there behind him and hits him with the cattle prod. Now, Suddenly, doctors start appearing at the headquarters of the camp, multiple doctors. As it turns out, like half of the counselors were dressed up as this doctor character, going around knocking out all these kids, and the other half of the counselors were basically pretending to be in danger and, or getting the kids to, organize at the mess hall or the kitchen and, try to be safe there. But obviously it's a ploy. At this point, Morgan and his little girlfriend, goddamn, I wish I knew her name. May, her name was May. Ha ha. So Morgan and May end up grabbing a couple of the cattle prods and going to the counselor's cabin where they're all kind of huddled right now, and they both walk in with cattle prods in their hands turned on, and instantly I get an ear-to-ear grin on my face because I'm thinking these kids are going to go on a fucking rampage and just knock all these adults out. But no, the camp counselor, the main camp counselor, or the camp manager, starts to give the kids an explanation. Morgan basically asks them, "Are we dead?" And the counselor's like, "Not exactly." And he's like, and then May asks, "Wait a minute, are we human?" And again, the counselor says, "Not exactly." What is actually happening here is the main guy, the main counselor, the guy who's running the camp, is actually a scientist. He apparently has developed a way to synthesize humans. Now, I'm not sure if these are cyborgs, if these are androids. We don't really get that explanation. The only explanation that we get is that the real Morgan died 2 years ago. That's why this Morgan, who has been created to replace him. So basically, the scientist is creating kids that are exact copies of kids who have died, and the parents are paying for it. So it's basically the parents replacing their dead child with a synthetic. So there you go. That's our reveal. So all of the kids at this camp, every single kid here is a synthetic. They are not a human child. The reason that they are forced to go to camp every summer is to age them. Basically, they get their firmware updated and they put a little bit of hair on their legs, or their hair on their head might grow a little bit, or they'll make like maybe some of the boys a little bit more muscular to kind of show that a year has passed. So yeah, literally these kids, quote unquote, are being forced to go to camp to get firmware updates every year and to age them, so that, because the parents obviously aren't going to tell everybody that their kid is a synthetic. I don't know the logistics of it, because ultimately, if your son dies, I mean, wouldn't your closest friends and family already know that? I mean, there's probably going to be a funeral, blah, blah, blah. I mean, unless this scientist guy is literally like combing the newspapers and the obituaries to find where kids die so that he can hit up the parents before they even have a funeral or make the announcement that the kid has been dead. Like I said, the logistics of this just make no fucking sense. Even after you get the reveal, there's so many plot holes here that don't make any goddamn sense. So after Morgan and May get the explanation, they're left alone. All the counselors leave, and they're left alone with Franklin, the one counselor who's been very nice and honest with them. And he basically looks at them both and he says, "You know what? I'm going to do something for you that we've never done for any of these kids. Now that you know the truth, I'm going to give you the option of forgetting everything and getting your update and just continuing living your life in, ignorant bliss, or don't don't drink the hot chocolate and remember everything." Apparently, both of the kids decide to remember. They don't want to forget all the new information that they got, even though that they now know that they're not technically humans. They still seem to be, at least Morgan anyway, seems to be accepting of it. He even makes a joke at the end of the movie, because the douchebag counselor shows up and his face is all tore up because Dirk hit him with a baseball bat. Dirk doesn't remember hitting him with a baseball bat because he got the update. Morgan basically makes a joke because Dirk asks the counselor, "What the fuck happened to your face?" And the counselor says, "Oh, I had a hiking accident." And then Morgan looks at him and smiles and says, "It looks more like a boating accident," which references the fact that the guy got hit with a boat earlier in the movie. not the bat attack, but the boat. So the douchebag counselor got hit in the face twice during this movie. So kudos there. So Morgan we see that Morgan is well adjusted. He's apparently has accepted the fact that he is what he is. But then suddenly we get our final scene of the film. And the final scene is the main counselor, the guy who's running the camp. He's on the phone with somebody. And the person on the phone is basically saying, hey, we have a situation. And the main counselor says, oh, no, we took care of that. Yeah, it went a little shitty last night, but everything is back to normal and we're good. And the guy's like, no, I'm not talking about the kids at the camp. I'm talking about all the other kids. Apparently, some of the kids, some of the synthetics that have been created have suddenly become violent for no reason. And that explains what happened to CJ. That's why CJ pushed Morgan into the lake and then beat the shit out of Raj. It was a fucking glitch. He fucking glitched out. And then the voice on the phone basically says this is happening all over the country. These kids have suddenly resorted to violence. They're killing people. And the guy and the counselor's like freaking out, like, oh shit, what do I do? Suddenly, May walks into the office and she's covered in blood, like from head to toe. She's got blood all over her. Then the camera switches to the lake view and we see in the lake the good girl camp counselor has been murdered and she's floating on the lake. And then we go back to the counselor's office and we see May there covered in blood and she's got a butcher knife in her hand. And the counselor is basically sitting there like he doesn't know what to say exactly. And then eventually May leaps towards him to stab him in the face and that movie ends right there. And that's literally it, my friends. That is Marshmallow 2025. I 100% agree with Mike. The movie that I wanted to see was starting with that last scene. That would have made this a solid horror movie. Yes, it still delves into sci-fi because these are AI or synthetic kids, whatever you want to call them. Like even in the movie, they don't have a name for them. They don't call them synthetics. That's just what I'm calling them. They don't say android or cyborg or robot or anything. All they say is replacement. So, and like I said, man, I wanted that movie to go on for at least another half hour. If this movie was 2 hours and the last half hour was just the kids glitching out and going crazy and killing people, that maybe would have saved this movie. But the ending that we ended up getting, even though I did enjoy it, to see May get a little taste of revenge against some of these counselors, or at least one and then the main counselor, it's very satisfying to me. But yeah, that's the movie that I wanted to watch, not the previous hour and a half that we got before this. So I don't know. But a sequel seems like it would be pointless, though, because we already know the story. The sequel would literally just be watching these kids going around killing people. And, in and of itself, that may not be enough to make an actual movie. So there you go. That is Marshmallow 2025. And then my last question, why is this movie called Marshmallow? Does anyone have any idea why this is the title of the movie? Because I don't.
I don't either.
I mean, marshmallow is a puffed sugar snack. What the fuck does that have to do with anything that happened in this movie? Like, they don't even eat s'mores. Like, even if they would have had a scene where they ate s'mores, I would have been like, okay, fine. At least there was marshmallows in the movie. But there's no marshmallows in the movie. So somebody smarter than me, please explain how this movie is named Marshmallow and why. And that's it for me, folks.
Yeah, I don't know how it ties in. Nothing was really getting roasted, so you can't do that. Because I was like, is there supposed to be like a summer camp tie-in with Marshmallow? But not really.
That's that could be my best guess. Summer camp, like that doesn't make any sense, but like a summertime kind of like the whole premise is that it's supposed to be like a camp where, you're like you're supposed to like explore and grow and do stuff like that, but that doesn't even make any sense. Like what happens to a marshmallow when you roast it is that it turns black inside. I don't know how that kind of meshes with what they're doing here.
Yeah, I don't know. like I said, you don't even have to give me a whole scene of them making s'mores. Just have it like a passing camera shot where the camera just passes across a couple of kids who are making s'mores. Then at least I can't argue. But now, like I said, I hate the director's name and I hate the name of this movie. And I'm not real fond of the movie either. So I guess I'll leave it at that. Back to you, Mike.
All right. Yeah, that's going to wrap up our thoughts on Marshmallow and this episode. But before we exit summer camp once again, let's see where else we can be heard. We just recorded episode 68, as I stated at the very beginning. That should probably be out maybe late this week or early next week, depending on.
Hopefully, our last
when I
issue,
get
or last
time.
episode will be out too, because Phil still hasn't released the ritual.
Yeah,
Oh, right.
I think he hit me up today saying it should be posted tomorrow. So I'll be messaging him saying, well, there'll probably be 2 episodes of Fresh Cuts ready.
Well, 4th of July weekend. I mean, I guess, it's understandable.
Yeah, but I think I got it. When did we record that? Last Monday or Sunday or?
Yeah, but I mean, who knows? Maybe he took the whole week off. I
Maybe,
mean, he's got a
yeah.
family, so I don't know. I
Yeah, it's already
don't want
up
to
on
speculate.
YouTube just in case, but
Nice.
yeah, so yeah, the main show and what else? The Sin Bin guest spot I did is up on YouTube. I think it was already up as of last Fresh Cuts, but yeah, I'll just remind that. And that's pretty much all I got. Venom, what about you?
Pretty much the same stuff we've had for the last couple of weeks. Creature Comforts episode 39 is the latest episode where we look at 1980s humanoids from the deep. We already have episode 40 planned out. We're going to be looking at the Black Scorpion, which should be a very, very fun time, as I absolutely love scorpions. And I actually do like this movie, but obviously we'll get into it during the episode. So yeah, episode 40, we'll be looking at the Black Scorpion. That'll probably get recorded in the next week or two, and I'll make sure that it's out before the end of July. Let's see, for what else is there? I think that's it. And then I do have a guest spot on the Joe Blow Horror Show. I'm still not sure when they're actually going to be releasing that, but as soon as I hear anything, I will let you know. On that episode, I got to talk about my favorite Giallo ever, and that is, of course, Dario Argento's Deep Red. Not just my favorite Giallo, but potentially my favorite Giallo score ever as well. So that was a fun time. So like I said, as soon as I know that that's out and available for listening, I'll let you guys know. And that's pretty much it for me.
All right. Anything to report on, Dawn?
Like I mentioned earlier, hopefully the old episode of this is released. Latest episode of Creature Comforts should be available or should be recording soon enough. And just waiting on the series of roundtables that I recorded throughout the year to come to pass. But other than that, not much.
All right. Well, I believe next week or next episode will also not be at the theater because I know what you did last summer.
Actually, there is a movie opening in theaters this weekend that I had talked about a couple of weeks ago. It's called Skill House. The problem is I checked the AMC app and it is showing multiple times per day this weekend. The problem is it's considered a special event. So I can't use my AMC A-list on it, which means I have to actually pay $24 if I want to go see this movie. So the question, of course, is, because I'm not sure if that would be the same for Mike on the Regal app as well, if it's even playing at any Regals, and if it's considered a special event that he has to pay for. I don't know that we really want to take the chance of paying that much money to see a movie, a very independent movie about social influencers playing a dangerous game. So I don't know. So
yeah,
it's either
there's a lot of factors going against that one.
That's what I mean. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I really want to pay $24 to see something that might suck. Because I've had AMC A-list for over 10 years, so I literally haven't paid for a movie in that time, and I don't know that I want to start now. So there'll probably be a discussion on what we'll be doing next week. More than likely, it'll be VOD, but who knows? Maybe we'll be able to find Skill House, some other outlet and do it anyway. But otherwise,
My thinking is there's this Korean, not Korean, Thai zombie movie coming to Netflix.
that's right. It drops on Wednesday, right? So
Yep.
yeah, I'm very down for that. I mean, you guys know.
I would rather we do that one if we're having to pay $30 a piece to watch some piece of shit.
Yeah, no, I don't blame you. Absolutely. Like I said, I mean, unless there's a way that we can find it somewhere online, which obviously wouldn't be the most legal thing in the world. And I genuinely hate doing that because I actually like supporting, horror filmmakers. But I don't know if I could bring myself to pay that much for a movie that I've never heard of, starring no one I've ever heard of. You know what I mean? So we'll probably dig around VOD and see. And like I said, that Thai movie sounds like a great candidate.
All right. Well, yeah. So we'll figure something out. And then after that, I think there's a couple weeks of the theater.
Yeah. Like 3 or 4 in a row.
Yeah.
So that'll be fun.
Cool. All right. Well, with that said, thanks everyone for listening to another episode of Fresh Cuts. Let's say bye to the listeners.
Later.
Figure out a better way to update the firmware on your AI children than sending them to summer camp. No kid actually likes summer camp. they fake it,
yeah,
but I'm pretty sure deep down
way too convoluted. Like, why not just power them down and ship them back to the manufacturers?
Why not just have a technician come to the house and do like a house call and do the firmware right there at the home, and then he doesn't have to fucking go to camp? I don't know. Yeah, like I said, plot holes aplenty. So we'll leave it at that.
All right. Well, the only thing to say is peace.